Now, how do you think like a vegan? Is it unethical not to? Well, our next guest wants us to fundamentally rethink how we view animals and then apply that logic to politics, economics, love, and any other aspect of being human. Emilia Lees has co-written Think Like a Vegan. So when did she become one?
So I became a vegan in 2013. It was connected to realizing that cows don't just express milk. They need a birth, a live birth, to lactate, just like people, obviously, because they are mammals. It hadn't really occurred to me. It took 43 years for that to occur, but there you go. That was the connection. And it was really brought to bear when I was sitting in the IVF doctor's office, thinking about, oh, here we are all trying to become mothers, yet in my other side of life here, I'm using a product that's meant for babies of another female. So that disconnect really spoke to me.
So for you, veganism is a feminist issue as much as anything else?
Sure. Veganism has interconnections with a variety of social justice issues. It is one aspect of looking at the world through a social justice and a fairness lens. Of course, veganism has to do with animals, but it doesn't exclude people. It shouldn't be regarded as something that excludes people or penalizes people. Quite the contrary. It very much intertwines and intersects with a variety of human issues, whether it's feminism, whether it's workers' rights, whether even it's environmental and health concerns and access to good, healthy food for all people.
Yes, it sounds like you're saying it stands really alongside other injustices like exploitation and ownership being central to that.
That's precisely right. The way we try to make it simple and straightforward is to look at it from a basic point of fairness. So we owe animals the same moral treatment as we owe people, unless there's a morally relevant reason to justify treating the animals differently. So if we can find a morally relevant reason to treat them differently in terms of including them or excluding them from the moral sphere, that's what we need to look at. But yes, it's absolutely has to do with exploitation and ownership because animals are owned and they're considered property.
So why don't more of us think of animals in that regard? How do most of us see it? Is it still this superiority complex that humans have over animals?
Yes, I think so. The superiority complex, as you say, there's a term, it's called speciesism, where humans are sort of placed above everyone else. That's just the way we have historically and traditionally been, and still very much are. So it's not that people are bad and don't want to see it. It's just not something that we're used to talking about, considering, seriously considering. The world is mostly not vegan. So this is the norm. So what we are proposing isn't a norm, and it'll take a bit of time to get there.
And at the risk of sounding trite, Emilia, are humans not superior to some animals? The example is often used of which would you save from a fire, a pet hamster or a human?
There's never an easy answer in terms of moral choices that you have to make in a moment of crisis. The superiority or not superiority issue doesn't really come into that at that moment. I mean, who is the person? I don't know. Is it somebody you love, somebody you don't love? Is it somebody who tried to hurt you? What obligations do you owe them? Are you running away from them? It's hard to say. It's not so much we should look at things in these extreme, distressing situations, but on our everyday. We make that decision of superiority every time we eat or have a snack. We've decided, consciously or unconsciously or because of tradition, and by using the word decided, I'm not making a judgment on anyone, because non-veganism is the norm. The world is non-vegan. So we make the decision that we are superior just on any regular Wednesday afternoon, really. We have a snack and it contains animal products. We have breakfast and it contains animal products. we make that judgment every day, not just in these stressful situations.
But in poorer countries, for example, when farmers say that this is the only way we can feed our families by using animals to do that, what do you say?
We absolutely have to be conscious of things like that and understand another's way of living, and also look at whether these traditions are sustainable in the long term with the ecological crisis that we are facing. A lot of these poor communities are going to be bearing the brunt of climate change. So we owe them as much a duty of care, really, in terms of ensuring that they're able to access food, whatever that may be. And, you know, you can have discussions with people in different communities about this because it's a concept. You're not trying to force anyone to do any one particular thing, but you are trying to change minds. And perhaps if you change someone's mind, they will find a different route.
Because people will say animals are treated humanely. How you kill an animal humanely is a separate point, but they say their welfare and the treatment is done in a healthy way and in a safe way. But you argue that that's not the point. It's what we use animals for.
That's exactly right. Treatment comes after use. So there wouldn't be any issue of treatment if you're not using. So when we're looking at this topic, we always like to go back to use and say, okay, let's question, well, why are we using animals? Should we be using animals? What are the issues? Treatment comes well after that. And of course, especially for the animals who are the subject of this treatment, without a doubt, being better treated is extremely relevant to them. But there's no way to say, well, they're not going to suffer the ultimate harm, being death. So whether they are treated well and then killed or treated not well and then killed, at the end of the day, they still die. That's why we have to question use.
So is it unethical, Amelia, not to think like a vegan? When you strip it all away, is it just immoral not to be vegan?
That's a very good question. And a difficult one in the world that we live in. We live in a non-vegan world, so we are trying to propose an alternative way of thinking to include animals into our moral community. Right now, they're excluded. So starting to think about it and considering it and being vegan does include them in your life as best you can. Whether somebody is immoral or I'm not going to make that judgment.
And Think Like a Vegan is written by Amelia Lease and Eva Sharalambides, and it's published by Unbound. Now, coming up at 11 on BBC Radio Ulster is Sunday with Stephen.